In the 2 decades since Columbine, video games have been at the center of the controversy surrounding gun violence in America.
Particularly violent video games.
And it has experts and some parents alarmed.
This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace.
I remember playing games from 10 years ago, so the majority of my life. Oh, I remember playing Star Wars Battlefront 2 on the PlayStation 2, yeah. That was one of the first games I played. Yeah, I've definitely played games that are higher age rating than my own age. Things like Halo, which is typically 16 rated, I played when I was younger. And GTA 5 and Call of Duty, which are 18s. I play now and I'm not even 18, so yeah, definitely. Personally, video games hasn't impacted me. I've only ever played them to play with my friends and socially, but I could definitely see how it could impact others. I could definitely see video games causing violence, but at the end of the day, the pros outweigh the cons by a mile. You know, video games is such a social place. You can make so many friends there. I mean, most people play video games as it is just to like talk with other people, and especially at times like these where COVID's a thing and loads of people are in lockdown. It's hard to get in contact with people face to face. So through video games is a great way. So I'd definitely say yes, it can cause violence, but in most cases, video games are really a great place for communities of people of all backgrounds.
I wanted to try and get a definitive answer once and for all. In this debate you have two sides that are so entrenched in their respective answers that no one is bothering to stop and actually look at the facts. On one side you have people that are convinced it must be the media that we're consuming that's causing this aggression. They are eager to point the blame there because they're biased against games, they don't understand them. However, on the other side you have people like myself, people who grew up playing video games, and personally I know a lot of people who play video games, like myself, and we are not violent people. The problem with that though, it's not real proof, it's only a small amount of anecdotal evidence, and it's also important to recognise that everyone's minds are different and they function differently. We are biased in this debate too because we're eager to defend something that we love, that's embodied our childhood. But neither side of the argument is having a conversation because we're both certain that we're right. What I would like more than anything is the truth. If video games have no connection to real world violence whatsoever, I want to have done the research and have the receipts, and I would like to prove it to people who claim otherwise. But on the other hand, if I was to find alternative evidence that says video games are warping our minds and are making us more prone to violent impulses, then I want us to hear that hard truth too. It will be important for us to know because we can start to find out a solution. I think on the most basic level, I would hope that we're all united in the same goal of trying to find the source of blame and how to correct it. In my opinion, I think it's hardly fair to take away something that is so important to so many people and give them a form of escapism and paint it in this light and demonize something that has, again, helped so many people with coping with everything just from work, school to the reality of their day-to-day life. I am heavily biased in this debate because I consider myself someone who has been helped hugely by video games. I admire the people who make them, the teams of people from all different communities, all different backgrounds who come together with the one goal of trying to bring people enjoyment. I thought it would be a good idea to reach out to a few people who can give more of a professional outlook. I reached out to David Bateman. the voice behind the cold and calculated killer, Agent 47 in the Hitman games. David has been the voice of 47 for the past 20 years.
Hello there, my name is David Bateson. I play Agent 47 in the Hitman franchise. Does violence in computer games lead to violence in real life? No, I don't think it does. It's a very long way from playing a first-person shooter to taking a real weapon and going onto the streets and killing people. So, not in my wildest fantasies could I imagine that. I will say that if you have issues, psychological or mental problems, and you're left too much to yourself, you might have some problems. And I would encourage you desperately to go and seek some help. But as such, violence in computer games leading to violence in real life? Nah, I don't think so.
I think David clearly stated that it could cause violence if these other circumstances were true. And now, before moving on to the next quote, I'd like to talk about a tragic event that happened way back in 1999, the Columbine school shooting. Before I go any further, I would like to preface this by saying this is a tragedy, and I hope everyone can agree that the two shooters were not in the right frame of mind, they weren't in the right mind space at all, and they should be condemned for what they did. But the main reason I wanted to talk about this is because it was found out that in a videotape recorded before the shooting, Harris, who was one of the shooters, expressed his excitement towards the upcoming tragic event, proclaiming it would be like Doom, a popular video game franchise. Some reports even go as far as to say Harris had mapped out a level to look like Columbine High. This would seem like concrete proof that video games can create violence. However, we have to look at other contributing factors. A study was conducted that deemed Harris had a disturbed personality and suffered from prominent narcissistic, antisocial, and sadistic traits. Which, of course, this in no way negates the severity of his actions. But this case was used as a flagship against video games for the longest time. Yes, Doom may have desensitized Harris to violence, and it may have been used to influence him in some way, but it all comes down to contributing factors. Yes, they have a part to play, and yes, they can enable these acts, but there are so many other things to consider, such as mental illness and the environment someone is brought up in, regardless of intervention from video games. If video games didn't exist, it would be something else we could have been discussing now. It could be films, it could be exercise. What Harris needed was help, but unfortunately he did not get the help he needed, which in turn led to this tragedy. Some video games also take things from the real world, because in most cases that's exactly what they are, interpretations of the world around us. Look at Call of Duty, for instance. The concept of countries at war did not originate from games. It originated from the real life. I reached out to Brian Deckard, who summed this up perfectly.
Violence and war predate video games by thousands of years. Video games are an evolution of media to explore and express the human condition, which includes living in a violent world, and an evolution of games and sport, which in my opinion also create a more productive outlet for competition between groups and build community instead of destroying it.
You should have listened to me, Captain.
Brian makes a good point in saying that all of these things predate the existence of video games. In theory, watching the news is just as bad as gaming, and the news is seen as this great informative thing for the most part, where in reality it exposes people to the reality of the world. In recent times, the world has become a really violent place. So to me, it really makes no difference whether people are being exposed to games or the news. They can be just as bad as each other. And in my opinion, I believe it's better to vent through the media of video games than to bottle it up inside, which could lead to more tragedies. For the final part of this documentary, I'd like to talk about what gaming means to me, and to do that, I'd like to talk about a game that has meant a lot to me. That's The Last of Us. On the surface, The Last of Us is a dystopian zombie adventure game. And sure, on the first playthrough, it feels exactly like that, but to me and so many others, it's so much more. To me, it's about vulnerability, allowing yourself to open up to people. In the game you play as Joel, a man mourning the loss of his only daughter, a man with few moral lines left to cross. You follow his journey with Ellie, a young girl who's lost her friends and her family, and you are tasked to smuggle her across the country. Throughout the game, you watch Joel and Ellie go from strangers completing a job to developing a father-daughter type bond and being able to watch that grow. And through playing it, slowly taught me to open myself up to others and build deep emotional connections with people and to allow myself to be more vulnerable. And throughout the 16 hours it takes to complete the game, you develop a connection with these characters as you watch their lives unfold in front of you. Yes, they are fake, but they are written as real people. And I'd like to leave you with this. Each person gets what they need from games. For me, it was the ability to open myself up more, to allow myself to feel things. For others, it's a way to escape, to make friends, or simply to unwind after a long day.
If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. Everything I have found here, I'm not found by myself. Try and sometimes you'll succeed to make this man of me. All my stolen missing parts I've no need for anymore, 'cause I believe, and I believe 'cause I can see our future days, days of you and me. There you go.